I just kind of was like, holy moly, who is that child?
Jazzy Davidson.
She put a basketball in her hand. I was like, oh gosh, that girl's going to be special.
The first thing you need to know about Jazzy Davidson is this. She is not the next Caitlin Clark, but she might be one of the first young stars since Caitlin to make people stop and say, wait a minute, this feels different, because the reason Caitlin Clark changed women's basketball was not just her talent. It was the feeling around her, the sense that every game mattered, every performance turned into a conversation, and every big moment made the audience grow. Jazzy is creating a smaller version of that feeling right now at USC, and that is why her name is starting to travel so fast. Jazzy Davidson arrived at USC as the #1 recruit in the 2025 class.
I'm Jazzy Davidson. I'm a girls basketball player and I'm a sophomore at Clackamas High School. I'm the #1 recruit in the class of 2025. I've been playing basketball since I was in kindergarten. I started just like rec ball and then I switched to AAU in 3rd grade. And ever since then, I've kind of just fell in love with it.
And that matters because stars who carry that label do not get time to hide. ESPN's freshman impact rankings put her first before the season, saying she would step into a major role immediately, with Juju Watkins out recovering from an ACL injury. So this was never a story about slowly finding minutes. This was a story about pressure from day one. USC needed production, creation, and stability, and Jazzy walked into that environment as a freshman and handled it like she belonged there. And once the season started, the numbers backed it up. ESPN lists her at around 17.9 points, 5.6 rebounds, and 4.1 assists per game as a freshman, which is already impressive. But the real stat that jumps out is the versatility. USC and the USBWA both noted that Jazzy led the Trojans in every major statistical category, including points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. Not freshmen, not guards. Every player in Division I women's basketball. That is the kind of detail that makes people pay attention because it tells you she is not just scoring. She is everywhere. That is where the Caitlin Clark comparison becomes interesting. Not because Jazzy plays exactly like Caitlin, because she does not. Caitlin's game was about deep range, extreme passing volume, and offensive chaos in the best possible way.
Caitlin Clark, you see just a great little rub screen by Aaliyah Boston.
Ends up caroming to Hull. Here's Clark in transition. Clark, oh, what a look! And Hull lays it in.
Clark led the league in assists a season ago. A little look, fake, and finish from Hull.
Her passing and the way that makes her a threat from so many different places on the floor. Clark, little mid-range is good.
Jazzy's game looks more balanced and more two-way. She scores, but she also defends. She creates, but she also rebounds. She blocks shots, she gets steals. She fills every gap on the floor. So the comparison is not really style, it is impact. It is that rare freshman feeling where one player can shape the entire identity of a team. And her background matters here too. According to USC's official bio, Jazzy, full name Jasmine Jazzy Amelie Davidson, was born in Portland, Oregon, and she came in with a life built around high-level competition and big goals. USC notes that she lists winning her first gold medal as her most thrilling sports moment, wants to be an Olympic gold medalist, and enjoys things like hiking, cooking, baking, swimming, painting, and going to the beach. That gives her a grounded feel off the court. She does not come across like a manufactured star. She feels like a serious young athlete with a full life and a real sense of where she wants to go. The USA basketball piece matters too, because Jazzy is not only a college breakout, she was also part of the 2025 USA Women's U19 national team and won gold at the 2025 FIBA U19 World Cup. So when people talk about her as a future WNBA star, they are not talking about one hot month or one hot tournament run. They are looking at a player who has already been identified for years as a top-level talent, then validated it on national and international stages. That matters because real stars usually leave a trail before the mainstream audience fully catches up. Jazzy is already building that trail, Then came the moment that pushed her beyond just prospect talk and into national attention. In her NCAA tournament debut against Clemson, Jazzy scored 31 points, including the go-ahead 3 in overtime, and lifted USC to a 71-67 win. AP called it one of the standout performances of the tournament, and USC later pointed to it as one of the defining moments of her freshman year. That game matters because stars are remembered differently once they do it in March. A lot of players have nice regular seasons. The audience gets bigger when the bracket starts. Jazzy met that moment straight away. And once that happened, the awards started stacking up. On March 25th, USC announced Jazzy had been named the USBWA Tamika Catchings National Freshman Player of the Year. Then on April 1st, USC announced she had also been named the WBCA NCAA Division I Freshman of the Year. ESPN's final freshman rankings had her at number 1 in the country. That is a serious combination. It tells you this is not a fan-driven social media wave. Coaches, writers, and national evaluators are all seeing the same thing. Jazzy Davidson did not just have a good freshman season, she had one of the best freshman seasons in the country. So why are people already connecting her name to Caitlin Clark? Because after Caitlin, people are looking for the next player who can become bigger than the box score. The next young star who can drive conversation, carry a program, and make fans feel like they need to watch. That does not mean Jazzy is going to become Caitlin. Caitlin was a one-of-one event, but Jazzy does have something very valuable. She already feels important. She already feels central, and in college basketball, that feeling is usually the first sign that something much bigger is coming. The scary part for the rest of the sport is that this is only the beginning. Jazzy is still just a freshman. USC's official bio makes clear she has 3 more seasons ahead, and the WBCA announcement said the basketball world is only starting to see what she can become. So when you step back and look at the full picture, the story almost writes itself. Elite recruit, immediate responsibility, historic all-around production, March breakout, National Freshman Awards, USA basketball pedigree, and a game that impacts both ends of the floor. That is not normal. That is the profile of a player who could become one of the defining names of the next era. So no, Jazzy Davidson is not the next Caitlin Clark. That is probably the wrong question anyway. The better question is this: can Jazzy Davidson become the first Jazzy Davidson, the kind of star who makes her own lane and forces everyone to stop comparing her to someone else? Right now, all the signs say yes, because what she has already done at USC is not just impressive for a freshman. It is the kind of start that makes people believe a future superstar is arriving right in front of them. If you're still watching, drop Jazzy Rising in the comments.
Questions for the Indiana Fever and the WNBA in this compressed offseason. That's because the expansion draft has happened. Go over the Portland Fire and the Toronto Tempo rosters in just a second. From the Fever point of view, they did lose 2 players.
The biggest problem with this WNBA draft is simple. It has talent, it has names, but it does not have a Caitlin Clark, and that is not a small thing. Caitlin Clark did not just enter the league as a top prospect, she entered as the entire conversation. She had the numbers, the highlights, the attention, the debate, and that feeling that everything was about to change the second she arrived. This class does not have that. It has good players. It may even have great players, but right now, nobody owns this draft the way Caitlin owned hers.
Because of the free agency status of so many of the players. In addition to drafting some pretty solid rookies and trades going to be commencing. But I gotta say, this expansion draft, which aired on ESPN and was said to be a live expansion draft, was so anticlimactic.
And that is why this class feels different straight away. Not because it lacks talent. It does not. It is because the spotlight is still empty. Nobody has fully taken it. Nobody has forced the entire basketball world to stop and say, that is the one. Instead, this draft feels like a fight for the top pick, a fight for the headlines, a fight for the role of face of the class.
Y'all know what time it is. Y'all already know it's about to go down. We're about 5 days away, and information is already coming out about the Indiana Fever potential draft picks. Now, I'm here to tell you this one came out of left field. If they pull this off, they will have a supporting cast like no other, and the WNBA will officially be on notice. The Indiana Fever possibly, allegedly found new talent to help the fans and the team make it to the next level, and that is the WNBA championship, bro.
And that uncertainty is exactly what makes it so interesting, but also so risky. Because think about what usually drives these drafts. Fans want clarity. They want that one name they can attach everything to. They want the obvious star, the obvious future, the obvious number one. But this time, that player is not here, or at least she has not made herself impossible to ignore yet. That changes the whole conversation. Now it is not about the next superstar arriving. It is about which one of these players can survive the pressure and become one after the fact. Azzi Fudd is probably the cleanest headline name in the class. She has the brand, the shot making, the big program aura, and the kind of style fans immediately recognize. She feels like a star. She looks like a star. And if you are building a video around the safest big name, she is the easiest choice. But even with all of that, she still does not feel inevitable. She feels like a contender, not a lock. And that is the whole point. In a normal draft, a player like that would already have the class wrapped up. In this one, she does not. Then you look at Lauren Betts, and the argument changes completely. Betts is not about flash. She is about dominance, size, presence, control. She brings that serious WNBA-ready feel where teams can convince themselves she might be the safest bet at the top. But again, even with all that, the class still does not revolve around her. She is respected, she is feared, she is discussed. But she is not swallowing the whole conversation the way Caitlin did. That difference matters. And then there is Awa Pham, which may be the most interesting name in the entire draft if you are trying to build suspense. Because this is where the casual audience and the hardcore audience split. Casual fans may still be catching up, but the people who really follow this stuff keep bringing her up for a reason. That gives her the strongest breakout angle in the class. She is the player people can pretend they discovered early. And that makes her very dangerous in a draft like this, because sometimes the player with the least noise at the start becomes the one everyone talks about later. Olivia Miles fits into this too, but from a different direction. She gives you the basketball purist case. The player smart people love. The player teams talk themselves into because the game looks cleaner with her in it. She may not have the loudest pre-draft hype, but she has the kind of game that can win people over fast. And that is why this class is tricky. There are real cases everywhere. There is no shortage of talent. There is just no single player overwhelming the field. That is the real story. This is not a weak draft. It is a draft without a ruler, and those are not the same thing. A weak draft feels empty. This one does not feel empty at all. It feels unstable. It feels unresolved. It feels like the top of the board is still waiting for somebody to grab it and refuse to let go. That creates opportunity, but it also creates pressure. Because once these players hit the league, the comparison will not stop. People will keep asking who became the star, who disappointed, who was overhyped, and who should have gone first. And whether people like it or not, Caitlin Clark is still the measuring stick. Not because every player has to play like her, not because every player has to shoot like her, but because she changed what the standard looks like. She raised the bar for attention. She raised the bar for relevance. She raised the bar for what it means to walk into the league and instantly matter. That is why this draft feels so strange. The talent is real, but the aura is missing. So no, there is not a true next Caitlin Clark in this draft right now. There are candidates for number one. There are future stars. There are names with upside, names with polish, names with dominance, and names with brand power. But there is no one figure towering over the class and forcing the world to look in one direction. That player has not appeared, at least not yet. And maybe that is what will make this draft fun, because if nobody owns it before draft night, that means somebody can steal it after. Somebody can land in the right place, get the right opportunity, and flip the whole conversation. Somebody can go from one of many names to the only name people remember. That is the opportunity in front of this class. Not to be the next Caitlin Clark, because that is probably impossible, but to make people stop asking for a next Caitlin Clark in the first place. If you are still watching, drop "No Caitlin" in the comments and tell me who you think is going number 1.
I don't know if she'll be a player for the Fever next year, but she's going to be on the roster, or they're going to have her rights. Worst case scenario, she's cored and traded. But it does appear that Kelsey Mitchell is going to be a member of the Fever next year, which means the Indiana Fever seem like they're going all in.
Caitlin Clark just did something that could change the entire Indiana Fever offseason before it even fully begins. She did not rant. She did not call anyone out by name. She did not make some reckless emotional statement. But what she did do was just as powerful. On national television, Clark made it crystal clear that bringing Kelsey Mitchell back is the priority. Not one option, not one possibility, the priority. And the second she said that, the pressure on Stephanie White and the Fever front office went through the roof. The source material frames it as Clark publicly making Mitchell's return the absolute number 1 priority and putting White in a difficult spot before training camp even starts.
Okay, you guys made the semis of the East last season. You had to watch from the sideline.
Yeah, it was tough.
Expectations, goals of this season, what you got for me?
I mean, we were trying to win it all last year, and that's certainly what we're trying to do this year. You know, it's a very unique situation. I think there's over 100 players in the league that are free agents, so we really only know about 5 people or 3 people that are going to be on our team next year, but I feel like we have a great core. You know, our first priority is to sign Kelsey Mitchell back.
Because now this is not just an internal basketball discussion anymore. Now it is public. Now the fans know. Now the media knows. And now if Indiana fails to get this done, everyone will know exactly what Clark wanted and exactly who the organization did not listen to. So here's the question. If you are Indiana, do you pay whatever it takes to keep Kelsey Mitchell, yes or no? Comment below. Because this is where the story gets serious. The biggest twist here is that Clark did not go on TV and distance herself from Mitchell. She did the opposite.
Heard it here first from Caitlin Clark that the Indiana Fever's first priority is signing back Kelsey Mitchell. Now, the reason there's been speculation as to if Kelsey Mitchell will return to the Fever or not is because of the new CBA and how the new salary structure is. So essentially, each team is able to afford 2 max contract players. The problem with the Fever is that not this season, but next season, there will be 3 players who will be up for that max contract: Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Kelsey Mitchell. Kelsey Mitchell's obviously a max contract player. This year, it could be her and Aaliyah Boston, but what does that mean for next season? But it seems like the Indiana Fever are in win now mode. So even if they can sign Kelsey for a 1-year max deal, they're able to run it back with their big 3. And like Caitlin said, if we are able to get these players back on our team, or if we're able to get this big 3 again, then we should be the favorites to win it all.
The transcript makes clear she wants Mitchell back, wants to run it back, and wants a real shot at winning with this core while healthy. And that matters, because this was not just a polite teammate compliment. This was Clark telling the world she already knows who she trusts beside her. That is why this hit so hard. Usually, a player this early in her career stays careful. She gives the safe answer. She says she trusts the front office. She says whatever happens will happen. She keeps it diplomatic. Clark did not really do that. She pointed directly at the player she believes is essential to Indiana's next step. And once she did that, the power dynamic changed, because Kelsey Mitchell is not just another guard on the roster. She is not just a familiar face. She is the one player who has already shown she can thrive next to Clark at a high level.
Obviously, there's a ton of free agents this year. There's over 100 free agents in the WNBA. And she said, you know, we might have 5 players or 3 players coming back. I think what she's alluding to here is the 3 players who are essentially still under contract with the Fever are Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Michaela Timpson, who are all still on their rookie deals. Now, on top of that, we know that there's an expansion draft coming up, and the team will have to core 5 players. Lexi Hall is a restricted free agent, which means that it's more likely that she would come back, or at least the Indiana Fever have a chance when it comes to her negotiating with other teams to keep her on the roster. And then on top of that, obviously Kelsey Mitchell is that first priority. So if I were to read between the lines here, that's probably what she's saying.
The transcript describes Mitchell as the heartbeat of the Fever backcourt. Clark's running mate, and someone who makes the game easier for her. That is the key point. This is not about friendship. This is not about sentiment. This is about basketball. When Clark has the ball, defenses panic because of her range and passing. They want to load up on her. They want to trap her. They want to make someone else beat them. But Mitchell changes that equation. If Mitchell is on the floor and hitting shots, the defense cannot just swarm Clark without paying for it. And when Clark bends the defense, Mitchell gets cleaner looks than most guards in the league. That is a real backcourt formula. That is not theoretical. And Clark clearly knows that if Mitchell walks, Indiana is not just losing a scorer, they are losing chemistry, they are losing rhythm, they are losing one of the only partnerships that already looks dangerous enough to matter in big games. The transcript even frames it as a connection that took a full season to build and one that could send Indiana back to square one if it disappears. Therefore, this becomes a direct challenge for Stephanie White. And to be fair to White, this is a brutal position for any new coach. A new coach usually wants time to evaluate the roster, time to install a system, time to decide what kind of team she actually wants. But Clark has now publicly accelerated that whole process. She has effectively told everyone what the Fever's championship formula should be before White has even coached a full season with this group. That is where the panic mode part comes from. Not because White is literally on camera panicking, but because the situation itself is loaded with pressure. If White and the front office agree with Clark, they still have to make the numbers work. But if they disagree, now they are not just making a basketball move. They are making a move that looks like it goes against their superstar's vision. The source material explicitly frames this as Clark telling the world who has to be on the team and forcing leadership into a high-stakes decision. And that brings us to the real problem: money. Because keeping Mitchell is easy to say, it is harder to do. The transcript keeps circling back to the same front office headache. If you commit big money to star talent, how much depth do you lose everywhere else? It even frames the dilemma as star power versus two quality players, with cap pressure tightening the whole roster. That is the nightmare scenario. You keep your stars, everyone celebrates, the headlines look great, but your bench gets thinner and thinner. Then the regular season exposes you, then the playoffs expose you even more. So this is the gamble. Clark appears to be saying the top-end talent matters most. Keep the elite pieces together. Trust the chemistry. Trust the firepower. But front offices do not always think like that. They think in numbers. They think in rotation pieces. They think in cap flexibility. They think about what happens when one injury changes everything. That is why this is such a fascinating power play from Clark. Because she is not only speaking like a franchise player, she is speaking like someone who understands leverage. The transcript actually presents this as a completely different side of Clark. Not the quiet young star from Iowa, but a player who understands her public influence, speaks directly to fans and ownership, and is comfortable using that leverage. And honestly, that may be the biggest story here. Caitlin Clark is no longer just the player people build hype around. She is becoming the player people have to build with. That is a major shift. Because when a player of her stature says something publicly, it does not stay inside the building. It becomes pressure, it becomes conversation, it becomes expectation. And once fans latch onto it, the organization loses the ability to quietly move in another direction. The transcript even notes that if Mitchell leaves, the backlash would be immediate, severe, and impossible to hide from. And that is why this offseason suddenly feels bigger than one contract. This is really a test of whether Indiana truly understands what it has in Clark, a test of whether Stephanie White can lead a team where the star already has massive public influence, and a test of whether the Fever are ready to act like a franchise chasing a title right now instead of one still figuring itself out. Because Clark's message was not subtle. She believes Indiana can win. She believes Mitchell is part of that. And she clearly is not interested in taking a step backwards just because the cap sheet gets uncomfortable. That is what makes this moment so important. This was not noise. This was not random off-season drama. This was Caitlin Clark planting a flag, and now the Fever have to decide whether they are going to follow it. So if Indiana cannot get this done, what do you think happens next? Does Clark stay patient, or does this become the first real crack in the Fever's championship push? And if you're still watching, drop "Run It Back" in the comments.